Hi everybody, welcome back to Zeutians and episode 5, Mariana's final days. We left off last time with the police just arriving at the house. Mariana had been sort of completely hysterical and irate and lost, very confused, and she didn't sound like herself. She certainly didn't look like herself. And one of the things that I hadn't mentioned in the last episode was how she kept saying it's all about love, and that she had to go, and she would keep repeating that. One of the other things that I think is really worth noting and acknowledging is how she seemed to come in and out of consciousness every sort of minute or so. It would be like somebody had turned the lights on in her brain and she suddenly came back, but for a split second, and then she'd say my name, and rather than looking so confused and lost, she'd recognize me and I'd see that, but then she'd go instantly again. And that kept happening. That kept happening throughout the day. Anyway, the police arrived. They restrained her as she fought with them, and eventually we got her into A&E. We were taken to Homerton Hospital. And if you want my personal opinion, don't ever go there. Ever. It's one of the worst hospitals commonly known in the NHS. I know a lot about this now because I've done my research, and my mother has been working on trying to help nurses get reform in their education and their dealings and their acknowledgement and listening to and acting on family members and their concerns, because we weren't listened to, we were ignored. Quite shockingly, actually, in my opinion, the things that happened to Maria, and equally shocking to the police, who were astonished that they were letting us go, which I'll get to. So we finally were seen after perhaps an hour or so of arriving at the hospital. The police had to attend and keep guard on Mariana's cubicle. She kept trying to flee. She was so paranoid. She kept trying to just burst away and run, and they kept having to stop her and hold her back. And again, she kept saying, it's all about love. I have to go. Where's my folder? And she was doing stuff with her phone, like she was grabbing my phone, or she was having her own phone and calling people and then immediately hanging up and doing the same thing over and over and over again. We had a visit from one of the doctors who took one look at Mariana, didn't seem to want to ask her any questions, and left the room. And we later found out that this doctor had said that she wasn't in any fit state to be interviewed or assessed. As far as they were concerned, the only way that they were going to interview and assess her was once they'd sedated her. So they pumped her full of drugs. I don't know what they gave her, but it did sedate her to a degree, although she was still extremely paranoid. She was untrusting of anything and anyone. She kept saying that people were trying to poison her. She kept sort of taking sips of tea and then spitting them out. We bought her a sandwich and some crisps, and again, she took one bite, spat it out and threw it away. So eventually, after the tranquilizers or sedatives had set in, the hospital arranged for her to be seen by a psychiatric or mental health assessment team. And that consisted of, I think it was 2 social workers and a psychotherapist. I'm pretty sure it was that way around. It could have been the other way around, but there were 3 people, myself and my mother in the room, and Mariana. But at this point, Mariana was so sedated, but still aware, and obviously still suffering with this sort of force or break, if you like, of what had happened to her. They asked her very sort of ridiculously stupid, simple questions about, how she was feeling, about what she intended, and I could see, Mum and I could both see that she was manipulating that environment and that scenario. She knew very well then, and we could see that she was savvy enough to figure out what she needed to say and what she didn't need to say. And at this point, like, we were both sort of questioning and giving eyeballs to the team, saying, why are you asking her? Like, what about addressing our concerns? Anyway, so one of the things that we were quite shocked by is that they didn't want to admit her. They decided that she was savvy and compos mentis enough to make her own decision about wanting to be admitted or not. And so they asked her, would you like to be admitted? And of course, immediately she said, no, I want to go home. And I was keen to take her home. I didn't want to see my wife admitted. So they asked me, would you like to voluntarily admit your wife? And I said, no, I'd like her to come home. I don't know if, honestly, I regret that now. I don't think I do, because we were led to believe that she was going to be okay. So I don't think I do. But she was obviously seriously unwell. She was obviously seriously able to manipulate the answers that she gave and the scenario in total. And they walked off, and eventually they came back and they said that they had concluded that she was probably having some sort of mental occurrence, but they thought that she would be fine. And they gave us some diazepam to administer for her when she was having some similar or severe episodes, but they said that they expected it to just go away. And I was a bit shocked by that, as was Mum, I think. And the most shocked were the police. The police said to us, you need to go back in that room and you need to demand that they admit her. And I said, well, how do we do that? And they were like, oh, well, we don't know, but there's no way that she should be let out. That was the quotes from the police. And I remember one of the female police officers said, I hope I don't see you again. Unfortunately, she saw us the next day. So they sent us home under the premise, and this is really important, they sent us home under the premise that we were going to be under the guidance and care of what they called a crisis team. And they described this was in the psychiatric assessment, the mental health assessment. They described this as a blue light flashing service that was available 24 hours a day. And that I had been given an appointment, Mariana and I had been given an appointment for 3 o'clock in the afternoon when somebody would come to the house, come to our flat and visit to help and determine if she had deteriorated or if she'd improved, and if there was significant need for it, she could be admitted into a ward. I know in reality, the reality is that they didn't admit her because they didn't have the beds, or they didn't justify the expense of putting her in a bed with the care that they felt that she needed. And so we were sent home. We were told I was told that if any time I was getting distressed or feeling like I needed help, I could call this crisis line, because they were available 24 hours a day, and I could call them requesting somebody to come earlier. That was a complete lie. There was no crisis team that was a flashing light service. It's not 24 hour. It certainly claims to be, but nobody answers the phone. We returned home, and at the hospital, Mariana had her very, very close friend, also called Mariana, come to visit. And we ended up travelling back to our flat in a taxi, dropped off everybody, and Mariana, her friend, came to stay with us in the flat. My wife Mariana's friend Bill was also, Katerina was also with us in the hospital, and we dropped her home. So we all returned back to the flat. We were pretty exhausted at this point. I don't remember what time of night it was, but I think it was fairly late on the Saturday night. We hoped for the best. I gave Mariana a diazepam to help her sleep, and eventually we fell asleep, although it seemed like Mariana was really, really struggling to drift off. When I woke up on the Sunday morning, Mariana, her friend, had stayed with us in the flat, and I could immediately recognise that Mariana was still not right. She was still really distant. She was still preoccupied. She was still playing with her phone, and I could see she was sort of hitting it hard and calling people and hanging up and repeatedly, and she kept pacing around each sort of corner of the flat. So I immediately thought, oh God, she's getting worse. And I tried to give her some medicine. And when I looked at the medicine, I realised that there were 2 pills missing. And I assumed that she'd taken them. I never found out whether she did or she didn't. When I asked her, she said she had. And she said she'd woken up before all of us and taken some medication. I don't know if that's true. She still wasn't herself. She was still adamant that she needed to go. She was still adamant that she needed to tell me that it was all about love. Over and over and over again. And I knew. Anyway, we took her for a walk. We went round to our local park, London Fields. We walked around and I continued to notice how out of it she was. She was a very friendly woman and really, really, really happy to converse with people and engage with people she didn't know. But it was rare that she would have that level of trust. And this was like a whole new level of Mariana. Like she was approaching anybody and everybody and asking for help, and asking for directions, and she was asking, do you know it's all about love, and can I use your phone? And this went on, multiple people, and I was getting scared. I was getting really scared. We went walking down our local market, Broadway Market, and she went into a couple of restaurants that we knew the owners and we were friends with, and again scared the waitress who we were friends with, because she didn't recognise her, and she was asking her, do you know it's all about love, and can I borrow your phone, and I need to call my sister, and she's in Brazil, she's going to be here. And it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And we went home. I called at that point. This must have been about, I think maybe midday, 12:30. I called the crisis team for the first time. I called them 4 times that Sunday. Nobody answered once. I left voicemails, and in the coroner's inquest, they played my voicemails, and you could hear my panic every single time worsening. But nobody replied, and nobody ever picked up the phone. And nobody came. Mariana was still really desperate to leave and flee. She just kept saying, I have to go, Bubba. I have to go. And she was fighting, and she was getting violent again. Her friend Bio had come to visit at this point, so it was myself and Bio in the flat. Mariana, her friend, had left. And Bio was very, very small, much smaller than Mariana. There was nothing she could have done to physically help me restrain her. I mean, at one point, I remember lying on the bed, trying to pin her down, and it tortured me. It tortured me just having to hold her down like that. I didn't want to do that to her. And we begged and pleaded for her to calm down. And she couldn't. And we struggled. And I remember somehow she picked up Zeus, the dog. And I was so scared. She was holding him so tightly and he was trembling, and I begged her to give me the dog. And eventually I managed to take him from her and try to restrain her again, and she kicked me, and I fell down. I hit my head on the door, and I think I banged the back of my head, and as I did that, she hit my ribs with her elbow and cracked like 2 or 3 of my ribs. And she broke free from my grip. And she ran for the door of the rooftop. And I got up immediately. I think I knew what was happening. I ran behind her. And I just couldn't get there in time. She climbed over our fence. And she turned and looked at me. And grinned. I begged her to stop. I shouted, please, Mariana, no. And she threw herself. She threw herself from our roof. I was inches from catching her, stopping her and reaching out, and I just couldn't reach her. And I screamed as I watched her fall. She landed 2 floors below us. We were on the 4th or 5th floor, I don't remember, but she landed and fell through a glass roof. She sliced herself through the stomach so badly. I'd never seen so much blood in all my life. And she was sort of laying there. I'm screaming. I'm completely lost and hysterical. And she's just staring at me, grinning, saying nothing, just a silent stare, grinning at me. I ran down to go to the lower floors to get to the place where she'd fallen through, and I was kind of banging on everybody's door to let me in, and I finally got to her, and she kept sort of coming back and screaming my name and saying, "Bubba, help, help." And eventually the fire brigade and the police turned up, and they needed to move me. They said that I was in the way. They moved me back to my flat, and then they wouldn't let me stand, and they wouldn't let me go to her. She was still on this glass roof at this point, and one of the ladies who lived downstairs was trying to help her. And eventually the fire brigade told her that she needed to leave. And as soon as she left, I heard another scream and a thud. Mariana had rolled herself off of that roof and rolled herself down another 2 floors and fell on the concrete. And she still wasn't dead. I heard the neighbors screaming, and I heard her calling my name over and over and over. I fucking begged. I begged the police to let me be with her. I fucking knew what was happening, and they wouldn't let me go. My poor, beautiful wife died alone in the fucking road because they wouldn't let me hold her hand. I'll never, ever forgive them for that. The police, the ambulance, and the fire brigade. Not ever. They knew what was happening to her, and they did nothing to let me have some peace, to let her have some peace. She was calling my name over and over. I remember when the police came, the ambulance or whoever they told me, and I just broke down and screamed. And then I asked to see her, and they let us. And I held her, and I kissed her. I told her how much I loved her. I got out of the ambulance, and the fucking policeman said to me, "We need you to call her parents, and we need to watch you do it." And I was like, wait a minute, what? I've just seen my wife seconds ago. And they said it again, like they needed to see me telling her parents. So I called her father. And he didn't know what the hell I was saying. He just burst out laughing. He thought I was joking. You know, I called her sister and I called her mother. Nine years it is now, guys. This is strange because I didn't try to do this. I don't know how it quite happened, but somehow I've managed to release these episodes on and around the actual anniversary of Mariana's death. Today's the 15th of October. It's Wednesday. I'm recording this in the afternoon, and tomorrow will be the 9th anniversary of her death. I plan on going. I do this every year if I can, if I'm in the country. I'll go to our house, our old flat, which has now been converted or refurbished, so I can't go upstairs. I mean, I wouldn't go upstairs anyway. But I lay a wreath of flowers on the point where she fell. And I go to my tree, her tree, and I sit and I talk and I listen and I pray. I'm gonna stop there, guys. This is a bit longer than I planned. I'll go into some more details about the aftermath. I'm so sorry that you have to share this with me, but I do need you to know what happened to Mariana. I do need you all to know that I don't believe that it was just a case of a psychotic break. I can't believe that. I think something else played a part in her death. I think several things did. About a week after she passed, no, a couple of days after she passed, I found some notes that she'd written when she was maybe on the Saturday or on the Sunday morning. And it said Boobaloo, which is another one of our nicknames. Wednesday, family. The numbers 60 and 20, or 60, 00, 20, 00 written. And on the 20th, which was only a few days later, 60 members of her family and my family gathered together. If you can hear me, Maddie, I love you so much. I'll never stop. All right, guys, I'm so sorry about the severity of the episode. Please stick with me, and I hope that you are okay hearing this. Please know I am. Somehow, I'm okay. I'm still fighting with my grief every day, but I am grateful. I'm more grateful in my life, for my life, than I've ever been. A lot of people will live their lives not knowing what it's like to be loved the way I was loved. I dare say most people. And I'm grateful that God and Maria allowed me to have that. And I'm grateful that God trusted me for this journey now. All right. We'll speak soon. Take care.